Fun fact, Australia has the highest per capita installation of solar in the world. Where, other countries look at us and go, how did we do it? Well, a couple of things. It's a sunny country, people sort of get it. Even in a cold place in Melbourne, it's still pretty sunny compared to most of Europe. Also, we've had government incentives which have driven the rapid uptake of solar and high electricity prices, and all those things have come together to make us very keen on solar. I've been installing solar since 1991. I made the mistake of buying an off-grid house without realising it was off-grid. True story. It was during the crazy time in Sydney, it was actually in the Blue Mountains, when you had about 5 minutes to make up your mind if you wanted to buy something, or someone else would gazump it and buy it. So we bought this place, took possession, I went and turned the light switch on, the lights didn't come on, I walked around and found a diesel generator out the back and realised it was off-grid. I thought it was just a quaint little house in the bush, and there you go. In fact, other fun fact, I bought it off Men at Work, the Australian rock band. It was their little getaway house. Yep. So that's actually how I got into renewables, because the cost of running a diesel generator as your only source of energy is just mad. I mean, these guys, this rock band, for their holiday house, were spending $250 a week on diesel. And it was only a weekender. So, yeah, that was not sustainable. So that got me into solar. The picture behind you is where I live now, in the Yarra Valley, on top of Mount Tulibuwong. It's a off-grid community. We're 51 years old, so founded in 1974, and I've been there 23 years. It's been a great sort of project for me too, which is to try to lift the game of a lot of the homes there. A lot of people had very primitive, they wouldn't mind me saying that, off-grid systems. Things were cobbled together, some old second-hand batteries, some solar panels they got off a waste dump or something, and they were pretty crude systems. So my background in electronics, renewables, kind of came to the fore. So I've done a lot of work at improving the renewables at Murumura Co-op, where I live. But I have a couple of alter egos. I'm also a YouTuber. The reason I'm showing you this is because actually I make a lot of content for general consumption. So I think I've made about 400 videos about everything from designing your own solar and battery system through to products, things like what inverter to use, what sort of batteries are available, smart energy devices. And I've even got another channel which is called Everything Off Grid, which is about off-grid living. So it's actually my day job is being an influencer. Kind of fun, being the oldest influencer in the world. So yeah, I do a bit of teaching online as well. So I mostly train people in the renewable field, professionals like electricians, electrical engineers, and solar professionals. So I do that all around the world. I've been to Europe, China, Pacific, Africa, New Zealand, and a lot in Australia. So I kind of get around. And training is kind of what my passion is too. Yeah, and so that's the other channel, Everything Off Grid, which is really about off-grid living, not about technology at all. And I do interviews with people about their homes, how they built them, what it's like to live in, yeah, just a range of stuff. So there you go. All those things you can just Google Everything Off Grid or Smart Energy Lab. And this is the other alter ego. During COVID, everyone changed their life during COVID, I think, some ways, things, and being stuck at home for a year, I sort of thought what I'll do is start doing free technical courses every Sunday. So I thought it's going to be pretty boring. So I dressed up as a badass rapper with a big gold chain and would talk about Australian safety standards. And somehow it stuck. So I'm actually known internationally as the guy with the gold chain. It is plastic. Okay, well, let's get to what you really came here for. So I'm going to talk a bit about solar, batteries, and energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is the poor relation of energy, but it's actually the cheapest. It's really the first form of energy is negawatts, the watts you never needed. And it's where the biggest cost savings are for the dollar spent. But it's not very exciting. It's not like a product you can say, it's nice and shiny, I've got this thing called energy efficiency. It's actually finding ways to use less. I brought some kind of things with me for a bit of show and tell, which I might, when we have our Q&A, we'll turn all the lights back on, come down and we can play with stuff. But just to show you some examples of really simple things to help you save energy. It could be as simple as turning off a light switch, but that's a lot of work. You've got to remember to do it, right? Now, who knows what this is? It's a timer. It's like a $10 timer. There's a lot of appliances in your home that just don't need to be on all the time. You go to bed, why not just let them turn themselves off? So buying some simple devices like this is a really easy way and labour saving of making your home more efficient. This can be a bit smarter too. So I was just talking to Nick, he's big on automation. And so you can get things like this. This is a smart plug. It looks like a plug on one side, male and female. You plug it in and it connects to your home wireless internet, and you can program it with your app on your phone, and you can control when it turns on, when it turns off. And you can even turn it on and off remotely from far away, like in another country even. You can turn the lights on when you're not in Australia. But it means you can start to automate more things. Some of these are not just a switch, but they also measure energy as well. So there's some like this, it's a little bit more, it looks similar, but this one actually measures energy and reports it to an app. And this is the other component to it, these two things. There's an Australian invention too, the power sensor. So using things like this, getting control of your energy usage is actually one of the best ways to save money. But also this is more in the architectural world, is just thinking about the design of your home and the ways you can improve it. Now, I'm not going to go into that because it's not my expertise, but I should point out that things like draft proofing actually can make a huge difference to the amount of energy your home uses, and it's sometimes quite simple. There's been government rebates to encourage people to do things like put chimney balloons in chimneys that are not used. And it turns out that it's a massive energy waster as an empty chimney. You know, the amount of heat that just goes up there when you're not using it. So yeah, these are simple things you can do. But of course, there's active things you can do, like installing solar panels. And we'll talk a bit about batteries, because they're kind of a tricky one. They don't generate energy at all. They only store it, so you can't call them renewable energy. They're a device to help you move energy, time shift it. So it's very important to think about what your motivations are. Is it to save money? Is it to live more off clean, renewable energy? Is it to be more self-reliant, not reliant on the grid as much, whether that's in terms of being able to survive blackouts and not lose power, or just to have a sense that the energy you produce, you use yourself? It's kind of more of a feel-good thing. It's quite funny, when I used to sell solar, people often start by saying, I want to be green and clean, and then you tell them the price and they go, oh, actually, I just want to save money. So it's good to know what the real motivation is. Now, so I keep veering away from talking about solar and batteries because there's so many other ways to save money as well. One of the amazing ones is actually just renegotiating your electricity contract. In Victoria, we have a thing called the loyalty tax. If you are loyal to your electricity retailer, you'll end up paying more. There is no benefit in staying with them. So you'll find a sweet deal to sign you up. Used to be these door knockers that come around and sign you up on a new plan, but they expire after 1 year and you go back onto the default plan, which is invariably more. So actually shopping around, churn a lot, change your retailer every year, like you do your smoke alarms, that's actually going to save you quite a bit. I know there's been some studies saying that on average people save 15% just by changing retailers. So, and it's not hard, it's really just a phone call. So that's one. Energy efficient appliances. Some appliances, they cost a lot, and you go, gee, why would I buy a fridge that's going to cost me twice as much as the other one's the same size? And then you look at the star rating on the front. Now that star rating is a true thing. It's actually under the government testing, you have to achieve a certain rating to get those stars. What it can mean is that the total cost of ownership of that product actually is much lower over its life because of its efficiency. So you might think that, and I like to pick, my favourite one is a fridge. A fridge, I reckon, is the only appliance you ever buy that you never turn off. Yep. And even when you think you've turned it off, it becomes a beer fridge out in the shed, right? So it's one of those ones I often target because it's a continuous energy user, and having an efficient refrigeration service makes a huge difference over total cost of ownership. So energy efficiency is a really great way to reduce your costs. And there's a government website called energyrating.gov.au, and it compares the ratings of lots of products. So basically any white goods you can think of. You can type in the size of your fridge you want, etc., and it'll rate them by stars, by capacity, etc. Okay, now we're getting on to stuff which sometimes I call it fairy dust. People think, I'll get solar panels and all my problems will go away. Okay? Well, as I started off by saying, we've got the highest adoption of solar per capita in the world. And that's partly because it's true that solar actually is very cost effective. Solar only without batteries. We're seeing, for paybacks for residential systems, less than 5 years. Sometimes less than 4 years. Just depends how sunny your house is and what prices you paid. But it's considering the product's got, the panels generally have a 25 to 30 year life. The inverter typically 10 years. It's going to produce more energy than it took to make it, so it's truly carbon neutral. In fact, solar panels will replace the energy that took to make them in only a matter of a few years. So it's definitely a win-win if you own the property. It's a bit more difficult if you're a renter because you've got to encourage your landlord to spend money on something to save you money. But the Victorian government, through Solar Victoria, actually has programs for renters, which does encourage the uptake of renewables, or solar particularly, for rental properties. So the state government's trying to do something about that. When I said it, sometimes I call it fairy dust, is because there's sometimes a change in people's mindset. Once they get solar installed, they start to not care so much about using electricity. And I can tell you this from my actual customers that sometimes they complain, our bill's gone up since you put that solar on our roof. And I go, well, let's have a look at your bill. Well, actually, you've been using a lot more energy. You've been generating some, which is nice. And then most of it was generated during the day when you weren't at home and was more or less gifted to the grid. And then you come home at night and turn on everything and wonder why your bill's gone up. So it's still, you have to be sensible at it. My motto is live by the sun if you've got solar power. If it's sunny, that's the time to do things like washing, dishwashing, clothes washing. In fact, in summertime, things like air conditioners become totally guilt-free during the day because you're directly taking power off your roof and running air cooling, and it's a very nice match. It's not just solar PV, photovoltaic, but also solar water heating. Now, solar water heating's changed a bit. So 30, 40 years ago, it was, well, not even that long ago, 20 years ago, it was these big black boxes on your roof, flat panels with copper pipes in them, and they worked quite well, actually. A solar thermal system is about 60% efficient at converting sunlight, well, not sunlight, but the energy from the sun into hot water. That's a pretty good conversion rating. Solar PV is only about 20% efficient at converting light into electricity. So you could say solar hot water heating from panels is very effective, but they've had some challenges. Because you've got water in your roof and you live in a cold climate like this where you get frosts, you've got the problem with frost valves not opening and the pipes cracking, so they can fail. So you've got to maintain them, you've got to maintain those frost valves. Then we saw the uptake of evacuated tubes, which are kind of a high-performance version of a flat panel. Instead, they're evacuated, or like vacuum flask tubes with a heat pipe inside them. And they are very effective at heating water in a very small area. So they were quite popular. But what we're seeing now is a transition away from pure solar thermal to using things like heat pumps, which you might think, well, a heat pump's just an electric hot water heater, Glenn. You plug it into the wall and it heats your water. Actually, it's a solar water heater. How can it be? It's on the dark side of my house. How can it be a solar water heater? Well, there is only one form of energy on our galaxy, and it's coming from the sun. It's heating everything. The residue on the Earth, I suppose, is a bit different, but and it heats the air. So air actually is solar heated, and a heat pump takes low-grade heat out of the atmosphere. It could be 10 degrees outside, and using a little bit of electricity can transform that to a high temperature and heat water, or in the case of a reverse cycle air conditioner, heat air. So it's a very efficient way of heating. Typically 3, 4, maybe even 5 times as efficient as just direct electric. They call that the coefficient of performance. Fancy word, but heat pumps generally are around the 3 to 5 mark. There's some standout ones that are even higher than that. So that means that there are solar water heaters that are very efficient, that use a little bit of electricity. On top of that, they don't use a large amount at any one time. So your traditional electric storage heaters have a big element in them, typically a 3.6 kilowatt, maybe even a 4.8 kilowatt element. So they use a lot of electricity. And so that's a consideration when you've got a limited capacity on your supply to your home. How much, particularly now that people are starting to add EVs to their homes, there's another massive energy user, or power demand, I should say. And so trying to have appliances that don't have really high peak power is an advantage too. So heat pumps. There is both state and federal. I think Solar Victoria's still got programs for heat pumps at the moment, and there's a federal program for heat pumps as well. So quite a lot of incentives. Now the last point on there, I've called it install battery storage, and I say long payback. My modelling up until recently was most battery storage systems would barely pay for themselves over their warranty period if you bought them purely to save money. So typically they have a 10-year warranty, and you'd find that if you do the sums and you actually cycle that battery every day, it might even out at about the 10-year mark. So you couldn't really call it a cost-effective solution if it's only about saving money. But what else can a battery do for you? Continuity of supply. Basically, if you're having a resilient energy source, so if the power goes out, you've still got power. So it's hard to value that. That's a quality of life feature. It's not just it's just not just saving you in terms of the cost of electricity. However, what's changed, and I'm going to talk about this a bit, is the federal government announced the Cheaper Home Batteries program, and it's the most generous program we've ever seen in the renewable space in Australia. The plan is they want over 1 million homes to add batteries, and they're doing it. It's already budgeted for $2.3 million in the last federal budget for the next 5 years. So you've got 5 years to try and take advantage of this program. It's very generous. It subsidises batteries at $370 per kilowatt hour, which, depending on the price that you pay for a battery system, is around 30 to 40% of the purchase price, even higher actually for some. So it's almost halving the price of batteries going forward. But I'll talk more about that scheme in a second. Now, I said, things like draft-proofing your home, insulation, passive solar design are great ways to save money. It's because most electricity use falls in those two big segments. That's a residential mix there, heating and cooling and heating water. It's almost 3/4 of the average home's energy use is just those two things. And if you can make those either more efficient or reduce the demand for them, then there's a huge saving. So changing things like LEDs, changing lights too, has been quite a successful program. I mean, halogen lights are really room heaters with a light function. They're mostly heat and a little bit of light. I used to say that about plasma TVs too. You know, like 700 watt plasma TV is replaced by your flat panel LCD screens for about 200 watts. It's a huge difference. So not heating up your room, just making pretty pictures on the screen. So this is a radical thought. Maybe how many people have a storage hot water service that runs on electricity? Claire's got one, big tank outside, right? 2, really? Only 2? A lot of people on gas? 3, 4? You got a heat pump? Not a heat pump, just a conventional resistive element tank. Yeah. Victoria actually has quite a lot of reticulated gas compared to other states, so they're not quite as common in urban areas as they are in other states, but they're effectively a battery because they store something you use every day. They store hot water. So if you can put free electricity into that hot water tank, it's like a battery. So I often call it the cheapest battery you already own. And how do you get that solar energy into that hot water tank? There's a couple of strategies. And this is where my little show and tell comes around. It's called a solar capture or solar diverter. Now I've got a couple of examples here from an Australian company called Catch Power. This is the simplest one. It's a switch that goes in your switchboard that controls the hot water service, turns it on or turns it off. But it's a smart switch that's integrated to your solar inverter. So when your solar inverter is producing above a certain amount of power, so say you've got a 3.8 kilowatt hot water element, you might not want it to switch it on until the solar is getting up to that level. And so this will switch on when there's surplus solar. That's quite a cheap option. I think these are about $300 installed, something like that. They also have monitoring, so they've got Wi-Fi built in and Bluetooth. You can program them with your phone. Quite a clever little device. So it can monitor your energy use as well as divert some to hot water. But it's only a switch, so it's not perfect. There'll be quite a lot of solar that is not high enough power to fully heat your tank, whereas this is a proportional diverter. I think these are about $700. And so it sends proportions of the power from your solar into your hot water tank. So if your solar system's producing 1 kilowatt, it'll send 1 kilowatt to your hot water tank, up to the maximum rating of your tank. So you get a very complete capture of your hot water. It does a lot more than just that. It's actually got a learning algorithm in here. It understands how you use hot water and makes sure that you always achieve your target temperature every day, irrespective of how much solar you have. So it uses the mains power. I mean, if you're into the technical, it does something called burst fire. So it's basically very rapidly switching on and off power so that one cycle will go to the tank and then one cycle will be skipped, one cycle will go to the tank, and varying that ratio to proportionally divert the average amount of energy that's surplus to the tank. Yeah. So these two things effectively turn that tank into a $5,000 to $10,000 battery because it's storing energy that you use every day. This is a question I get almost every time I would have a customer ring me up about solar. They'd say, is my roof suitable for solar? And I can remember when Google Earth first came out, people didn't know about it. And it used to freak out people when I'd say, yeah, I think your roof's pretty good. And you'd tell me your address. Yeah, I reckon. Are you out the front? No. You've got a red Holden Chimera. You are out the front. But everyone knows about Google Earth now. But what it allows you to do is actually look at roofs from space. But there are software packages that can do like heat maps of a roof and work out, when I say heat map, it's in terms of performance of that roof. It's not actual heat. And so you can see where the best parts of the roof are. But some people think, oh, I've got a tree that shades my roof a bit in the wintertime, so I'm probably not really suitable, or my house doesn't face towards the north, it faces sort of southeast. Well, it's all about understanding the solar resource and how much benefit you're going to get. So I like to use this example that an unshaded roof in Melbourne facing north compared to a south-facing roof at 30 degrees pitch facing south is only 75% as good. So you might think it's south-facing roof is useless. I actually these days say south is the new north because the north's already full. So don't write off any part of your roof. It will produce more energy than an empty roof. But there are some other factors as well, which I haven't got a chart for this, but remember I said the best way to use solar is to live by the sun, i.e. use solar energy when the sun's shining and not try and store it, directly use it. If you look at how people live, you have to understand their energy patterns. So if you're a person who goes to work every day and leaves in the morning and comes home in the afternoon or evening, you probably don't use much energy in the middle of the day when the sun's shining. You might use energy, particularly in summer, when the sun's shining in the morning, and use energy when the sun's shining in the afternoon when you come home. So that means that orientating your panels east and west actually gives you a better self-use of solar. So east-west is now a very popular design if you have a suitable house for that, because it covers a larger period of your day. You don't have a big thumping peak in the middle of the day when you're not at home. If you had a north-facing system, you have a long, low profile over the whole day. So it's really something that can be modelled. And there's, good solar companies will actually use this software and be able to give you a report on your roof. A little bit of a plug. I have a solar software company called Solar Plus, and we make this software for industry people. So yeah, something that's very easy to model if you can see the roof, basically. Now, Victoria has been wonderful in encouraging the uptake of not just solar, but a whole bunch of schemes, everything from chimney balloons, draft proofing, smart switches, heat pumps, and solar and batteries. And that program falls under Solar Victoria. So it's worth going to their website, solar.vic.gov, vic.gov.au. No, solar.vic.gov.au, I'll get it right. Well, just Google Solar Victoria, you'll find them. Though I did notice when I Googled it tonight, some other companies have bought the top position on the Google searches, and it takes you away to some solar company who's trying to sell you something. So make sure you're looking at the government website, which should look like this, and they'll tell you what programs are available and whether you're eligible for them. They tend to be rather short-lived too. So like they've just finished the battery, Solar Victoria's battery program, like a couple of months ago. So some of them don't wait around if you're thinking about it. Okay, so the federal government since 2001 has had programs for renewables, and way back then it was a very, very minor program, and it was known as the photovoltaic rebate program. In 2007, it was budgeted on budget night to allow up to $8,000 for a 1 kilowatt system. And that's when my business took off. Suddenly, I went from having no one wanting solar on a grid-connected home, only off-grid, to having lots of people wanting solar, because back then, $8,000 for a 1 kilowatt system was a lot of money, but there was a lot of demand. These days, that would be a ridiculously expensive system, even for a 5 or 6 kilowatt system. So the price of solar has tracked down tremendously. In fact, since 1974, it's been more or less a continuous drop in price in terms of dollars per watt. 1974 it was around $20 per watt. And now if you're looking at, I know the wholesale price is around about 20 to 30 cents per watt. So it's a huge drop, and that's all about volume. The world makes a lot of solar panels, so prices come down a lot. But the federal government has this scheme known as the Small Scale Renewable Energy Scheme, It's been running since 2010. I can't remember, 2012, I think. And it means based on what part of Australia you're in, there's 4 zones, you get the ability to create certificates for the amount of energy your system will produce until 2030. So you get it as an advance on the energy you're going to produce. I know it seems a bit weird, but that's how they did it. And so at the moment, we've got 5 years left before this scheme winds down completely. And so I gave an example here of a 6.6 kilowatt system with 5 years left of deeming, times the zone rating for your zone, which is southern Victoria, 1.85, means you'll get 39 certificates. Now, almost nobody actually does anything with those certificates as an owner. They generally include it as a point of purchase discount to the company that's selling you the system. They will say, this is the price less the STCs, and this is what you pay, and they'll trade the STCs. So they're actually a tradable certificate. They're worth about $36, $37 at the moment each, and therefore you'd get about $1,400 rebate from the federal scheme. There's also a Victorian rebate at the moment for solar too, so you'll get the Solar Victoria rebate as well. It's a bit less than that. So there's a lot of financial incentives just to put solar on. Now this is the new kid on the block. This is the Cheaper Home Batteries program, and I'm just checking the time. It's kind of a cheeky name, like cheaper. That's what the government called it. So Cheaper Home Batteries, the intent is, like I said earlier on, to put 1 million batteries in homes. Now, why would the federal government want to do this? You might be cynical and say, well, it's an election sweetener. Probably was. But it also is solving problems for the electricity grid. The problem we have in Australia at the moment is too much solar, too much rooftop solar. We have something like, oh gosh, I forgot how many gigawatts it is now, because it keeps going up, but a lot of gigawatts, a lot of solar. And in the middle of the day, it's got nowhere to go. So they have to do something. They have to curtail it, or they have to displace other generators. And so it's actually got to the point where there's no incentive to export solar anymore. For most retailers will give you next to nothing. I think the default rate in Victoria is 0.02 of a cent per kilowatt hour, which is close to nothing without being nothing. So how will batteries help? Well, if you're generating power and then storing it at the site that you generate it, you're not disturbing the grid by spilling it out to the grid. And so it's soaking up a lot of, at the point of generation, all that surplus solar. So it actually helps the grid in terms of voltage rise, grid stability, without having to invest in great big infrastructure projects like Snowy 2.0, which is actually going to be a great battery when it's finished, but it takes a long time to build those big infrastructure projects. We're doing it one home at a time. So it's actually going to benefit the electricity grid as well as homes, and will have an impact on reducing the price of electricity. That's the plan anyway. So what are these things? Battery STCs. Unlike normal STCs, which are a tradable commodity, go into a market and someone will buy them to offset their commitment to renewable energy. So big generators have to produce a certain amount of renewable energy, and if a big generator is a coal-fired power station, they don't make any renewable energy, so they have to buy those certificates to represent a certain amount of their generation. So they would normally buy STCs, but in the case of the battery program, the government said, we'll buy them. So the government's funding it directly. So you've got a fixed price, basically. It's not going to go up and down with market demand. And it's the floor price is $40 per certificate. So I gave an example here, a 16 kilowatt hour battery, which is a pretty popular size at the moment, would receive around $5,900 of rebate. This program starts Tuesday next week. So it's going to make a big difference to the price of batteries. So the Cheaper Home Battery program, as I said, starts next week. It's an upfront discount. The government aimed it to be around 30%. Now, it does scale down every year. So that means it's a 5-year program, and the amount of certificates that it generates per kilowatt hour will reduce every year down to 2030. So early adopters will get the best benefit from it. It will be administered under government regulation, which is a bit of technical speak for we don't have to pass an act of parliament. They can change regulations without it being a big deal. So it doesn't have to go through parliament. Eligibility. Now, this is another good thing about it. It's incredibly wide eligibility criteria. Even though it's called cheaper home batteries, it's not just for homes, it's for businesses as well. And they can be on-grid or off-grid. So there's basically any systems up to 100 kilowatt hours total capacity are eligible for this program. So you can get your big battery. But only the first 50 kilowatt hours is rebated. So the sweet spot is around that mark. It can be a range of solutions. So it can be a single battery, or sometimes you have batteries which are modular to build a big system out of them. You can't get 2 bites of the cherry. So once you've applied for this, that's it. Even though you didn't go for a big system, you can't apply for it again. And the batteries must be on the CEC approved list, which is like a quality list of batteries. It tries to avoid its funding junk products. Yep. It's got to be installed by a solar accredited Australia installer, so they've done special training on installing battery systems, and it's got to meet all the state regulations as well. The last point's interesting. The retailer gets you to sign a written declaration that the batteries are intended for permanent use and won't be moved or sold. So if you move house, you can't take them with you, and you can't just sell them and try and make a profit on the side. They can be installed with existing solar, so it doesn't have to be a new system. You might have solar already on your home, and you can add batteries to it, or you might have no solar at all, but it has to be associated with solar. And there's a minimum capacity of 5 kilowatt hours. The smallest battery you can get the rebate for is 5, and as I said, up to 100 kilowatt hours total. And if you really got a big system, maximum PV size associated with 100 kilowatts. So that's really only the commercial customers will be up in that range. The last point is a little technical one. You might go, I've got an inverter, but it's like 10 years old and it's not on the current CEC approved list. It doesn't matter as long as it was never removed for safety or other reasons. If it was removed because its certificate expired, because every inverter has a safety test certificate that lasts for 5 years, and so they get removed if that certificate's not renewed, it's not a safety issue. So your old inverter that was once on the CEC list is still eligible for a battery. Let me explain what a VPP is first for those who are not familiar with the acronym, virtual power plant. What it means is when you've got lots of individuals with batteries, if you can aggregate those through communication system, like, basically through the internet, and a third party can operate those batteries to charge or discharge on demand, they're effectively a big battery. They therefore can participate in the wholesale electricity market. So your retailer can use your battery to trade energy and pay you handsomely for the benefit of it. But the gentleman's question is, what will that do to my battery? Because they're cycling it, not me. So VPPs will have sort of conditions under which they will use your battery, and so you have to read the fine print. Generally, they'll only do it when there is a price spike, whether it's negative or positive. Ironically, we're now seeing negative pricing on a wholesale market. What does that mean? You get paid to use energy. It sounds crazy. And the wholesale market is incredibly volatile when there is a big disturbance, like a storm and some high voltage power lines fall over in South Australia. The wholesale price goes from $30, $40 a megawatt hour to $14,000 a megawatt hour. It happens a few times, not very often a year, and some retailers go bust in a day if they can't hedge against that price rise. But VPPs can benefit from that because they can go, all right, we'll sell our electricity to you not at 5 cents a kilowatt hour, but at $5 a kilowatt hour. And suddenly your battery isn't making you a lot of money. But I should be realistic about this. It's hard to model because it's all about what happens in the future, storms, power quality issues, how often that price will flow through to you. You're concerned about how will it affect the life of your battery. Let's talk about lithium-ion batteries, which is more or less 99% of the market, right? Most lithium batteries have a warranty of 10 years. Typically, that'll be 4,000 to 6,000 cycles. If you've got a battery that you charge and discharge once a day, you won't even get to that cycle life in 10 years. 10 years is 3,460 cycles or whatever it is. So it's not actually going to cycle a lot on your normal use pattern. If you're part of a VPP, they might cycle it a bit more frequently, like it might do 2 cycles a day. But those volatile pricings don't last around for long. They're only for hours. So your battery can only discharge so fast. So it might discharge for 1 hour, take out 20% of your capacity, and then stop. So I don't think it's going to have a big impact on the life of your battery. And the reason that it's in this program is it's providing another financial incentive to the customer to join, because you'll get not only the rebate for the battery, but if you join a VPP, you'll be able to get extra discounts on your electricity. Now, I've asked a few people who are members of VPPs what they've received, and the pricing is wildly varied. I've heard people say, we've got $400 a year for our VPP, for our Tesla Powerwall, 13.4 kilowatt hour battery. Someone else said, I made $520 in one day because of a price spike. So it's just crazy. Yeah. So last, it's a bit boring, this slide, but anyway, you've got to have documentation. Federal government doesn't, I think ever since the pink bats disaster, they want to make sure they do the right thing. People don't lose their life. They're not encouraging dodgy products being sold. So solar is now probably the most regulated industry in Australia. So it's a lot of documents. I mean, as an installer, you've got to take all these selfie photos to prove you were there. You've got to do one at the beginning of the job, one in the middle of the job, showing you actually standing in front of the equipment, one at the letterbox, showing the address, one on the roof, installing the rails, one commissioning the system, doing the testing, all these selfies, and they've got to be GeoIP from your phone so they know you're actually at that site. Yeah, can you think of any other industry that has that? I don't know. All right, so I'm going to be a little bit quicker now. I just thought I'd do a little explainer for the lady who was asking about inverters and batteries and adding them. So when I say solar inverter, I mean an inverter that only does one thing. It converts solar energy into electricity, and which is pretty much what we've been installing for the last decade or more. And you know, there's lots of brands out there. This is a very popular one in Australia, Fronius, an Austrian company. Then you've got battery inverters. They don't have solar panels connected to them. They just have a battery connected to them. But they convert AC power and charge a battery, and then reverse. They can take battery energy and make AC power. Whereas a solar inverter only converts solar energy into electricity. It doesn't store it. Sometimes those two products can be put into a system. So if you've got, for instance, an existing solar inverter, it could be 10 years old, you could add a battery inverter if it's compatible. Now, there's a little bit about what that compatibility is, but I'll try and explain that simply in a second. Then you've got so-called hybrid inverters. That means they're both a solar inverter and a battery inverter in the same box. So you connect your solar panels to it, you connect your batteries to it, you connect the grid to it, and you connect a backup load to it, all in the one box. That suits a new installation or an upgrade for an existing installation, because you're not putting two products in to do one job. So hybrid inverters are very popular now that batteries are on the scene. Then you've got the fully integrated all-in-one. So that's a stackable system. I've got one of those on my house. The bottom 4 blocks are batteries and the top one's the inverter. The whole thing is just a column and it's battery, 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 inverter. The advantage of these stackable systems, and there's quite a few brands doing these, is that you can have different capacities to suit your needs. One battery, 5 kilowatt hours, 2 batteries, 10, 3, 15, etc. And then you've got the so-called AC battery. Now, a battery is DC by science, but when you put it in a box and put an inverter in the same box, like a Tesla Powerwall, the output is just AC power. And so it's ideal for coupling to an existing installation. So you've got solar, which produces AC power to your switchboard in your home, and you've got one of these AC batteries, I'm calling them, which can take some of that AC power from your solar and store it in a battery, or it can reverse that process and power your home. So there's options for both existing installations and new. You don't have to change your inverter. When it comes to solar panels, and I mentioned things like shading before, there are ways to kind of make it less of a problem, and there's 2 popular solutions to this. One is these things called panel optimizers. They go on every panel and they adjust the performance every panel to suit the amount of available solar energy. Normally what happens is all your panels are normally connected in a string. One feeds the next, needs the next. And it's a bit like if you have a hose in the garden and you stand on one part of the hose, the whole flow starts to slow down. So a pure string suffers a bit more from shading than one that has panel optimization. But there's another way of looking at this. These things now cost as much as a solar panel. You could just add more solar panels. In fact, my favourite saying is the answer to all your problems is just more solar panels. But if you're a geek, you get to see a lot of data. You get to be able to see how every panel on your roof is working or not working. So you get those little different coloured blue things are the performance of each panel. So you can see exactly how they're working. It's quite good for fault finding too. Then you've got these things called microinverters. These are similar little boxes that go on the back of every panel, but they convert directly to AC power. So there's no high voltage DC floating around on your roof. The highest voltage is one panel, typically 40, 50 volts. And then everything is AC. So it gives you the panel level optimization, and it's a full AC system. Yeah, so those are 2 ways of improving, particularly when you have shading issues. I think I've nearly finished. I'm going to get hooked off the stage in a second. So batteries, as summary, they store energy for later use, so they're basically a time shifter for when you use energy, particularly if you use energy at night time. One of the features that people really like is that they often can provide backup during grid outages. But beware, not all battery systems have backup. There's some which are purely for self-use of your solar. The grid goes off, your batteries go off. So it's important, if you want backup, you ask first, does it do backup? And the next question is, how much backup will it give me? So most inverters with a battery might be, say, rated at 5, 6 kilowatts for a single phase installation. That might be the limit of its backup. Whereas normally you could be charging your car at 7.5 kilowatts, running your oven at 4 kilowatts, turning lights on, and your house works fine. If the grid goes off, your little inverter's trying to replace all that demand, it'll shut down as well. So it's best to think about what's essential, and only the essential loads put on that backup circuit. Don't try and put the whole house on. Though there are some systems big enough to do the whole house. I think I've covered this. Yes, you can retrofit batteries. And there are some lovely apps that come with them with lovely pretty pictures so you can monitor your system. And I did a very simple economic analysis for a customer. He's actually a friend of mine. That's his house in the middle. And we'll put some solar on there. but we'd also put monitoring so we could see their consumption of their home as well as their solar production. And what it meant was they were virtually 100% self-use. So even though it was quite a small storage system, they were only using about 4.5, on average, about 6 or 7 kilowatt hours a day. So quite a small battery was sufficient for them. So I think this comes back to your question, what is the right size? You have to get your meter readings from your retailer, not just your bill, which only tells you your consumption over a quarter or your average daily, but actually when you use energy, it matters, because if you use energy at night time, it's going to be coming out of a battery. If you use energy during the daytime, it's going to be coming off your solar first. And so a good solar installer will be able to model that for you. And fortunately, smart meters are pretty ubiquitous throughout Victoria now, and smart meters record in 30-minute intervals the amount of energy you've used, and that's your data. Even though the electricity utility is recording it, it's your data, so you can just request that data as a CSV file. Your installer can use that to model your energy use and work out what the right size battery for whatever proportion of self-reliance you want. You might say, I want 50% of my energy to be self-reliant, and the other rest can come from the grid. It's up to you. So yeah, that's how you size. And this is a bit out of date, this slide now, but I was just showing the payback on a solar-only system for this customer, and it was around about the 5-year mark, using actual current prices. But if you look at that price there, for a 6.6 kilowatt system, that's quite high now. Prices keep coming down because solar panels get cheaper, inverters get cheaper, and we are one of the fastest installers in the world. I was actually part of a study that sent some guys from the US from a university to study Australian installers to see why they could install solar so fast. And the executive summary is really funny. Australian installers don't take lunch breaks, and they're a bit lax on safety. Though that last point is changed because now there's a lot more regulation around safety on roofs. You've got to have edge protection, etc. But add a battery to that system and the payback went right out to 10 years. But like I said, this is before any of the new rebates came around. So we're now seeing a similar payback period once the battery rebate's being launched to just solar only. Used to be. So it's made a big change. I think I've covered this already, solar diverters. And if during we turn all the lights back on, you're welcome to come up here and ask me questions, and I've got a few little things. And you might wonder what this is doing here. Here's the smallest backup battery you can get, portable power stations. They really become a thing. They're really popular now. Most people use them for camping, but they can be your emergency power in your home. And we don't have to spend $10,000 on it. It might be just the power goes out for an hour or two. You want just to keep the fridge running. You might want a light or two. Something like this is actually a viable option. This is about the smallest one I've got. I've got about 7 of these, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. I never get to see the price because they just send them to me to make reviews. But you can look them up. Portable power stations. Yeah, brands like EcoFlow, Blue Yeti. This one's a Voltex. Yeah, they're really popular. So that's it. 51 years, my community's been off-grid.